Welcome back to 755 is Real. I'm David O'Brien, Braves writer for The Athletic, with my regular co-host, Eric O'Flaherty, former Braves reliever, and our special guest today, frequent Brave, multi-time Brave, Kelly Johnson. What's up, Kelly?
What's up, Kelly?
Nothing, man. Just fighting nature at home right now.
Kelly just had a snake on his floor. That's why we were delayed getting to you guys. Kelly had a large snake on his floor, maybe venomous, possibly venomous.
Dude, yeah, venomous rattler / cobra, at least 6 to 12 feet long. Oh, man.
So I had my dentist this morning, and my hygienist was cleaning my teeth, and she said, guess who came by to trick or treating on Sunday night, that was the game 6, Brace clinched, or game 5, Brace clinching game 6 on Tuesday. But game 5 came by her house trick or treating. Brian McCann.
B Mac.
He lives right down the street from them with his kid. I think his kid was dressed as Brian.
Oh, man.
I think that's what she said.
Is that allowed, though?
I think so. I think you can. If they want to do it, if you make them do it, it's no good. But I guarantee he didn't make them do that.
I think that's what he said. She might have asked him what he was or something. He said, "That's my dad, Brian McCann. You know who he is."
My kid wanted to do that. He wanted to go to school as a baseball player, and I was like, we just moved to a new town. I don't really want to be advertising in that way. So he went as like a snake or something like that. I can't remember, but yeah, I think it's a little pushy.
And my dentist herself, that was the hygienist. My dentist, because everybody wants to talk about the Braves now. My dentist lives on the same block or same street as Alex Anthopoulos.
So she's struggling. The dentist games is struggling right now.
Yeah,
huh?
She ain't struggling, man. She's like a high-dollar dentist. She ain't like a normal dentist. She's like restorative stuff and everything. She's like rolling in dough. But, yeah.
Everybody knows somebody with the Braves these days.
Yeah, all of a sudden,
That's for sure.
Yeah, all of a sudden, everybody wants to talk about the Braves. So they're like, did you go to the games? I'm like, yeah, I cover the team. But they're like, and now they're all interested,
I'll tell you who wasn't watching the Braves is that cop that tried to arrest Matzik.
Oh, my God. Dude, that was unbelievable. I mean, can you imagine if he'd actually hurt him or something? Because he twisted his arm behind his back.
Right arm, but still suplexed him or something in the street.
Yeah. How does that even happen? I mean, Matzik's like 6'3", 6'4", with a Matzik jersey on, a pimp hat. And he's running across the street in front of the trolley, and they think he's just like an interloper. He's got a beard. He must have
jumped out. He must have jumped out to say hi to somebody.
Yeah, somebody. Yeah, I think so. And he had a beer in his hand, so I think both of those things triggered the cop.
Yeah, he was locked in on him.
A lot of beer being consumed in that parade for sure.
Oh, and he had to. You could tell it took him a while to explain it too. The cop didn't initially believe him. The cop's like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, whatever." He kept pushing him.
I know. That'd have been great. That'd have been great if he got put in the car.
Or if he would have broke Matzik's arm. That wouldn't have been funny, but
yeah, I don't know if that would have been great.
Big Astros fan, that cop. Big Astros.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the cop, if anything would have happened, they're like 9,000 people had their phones out. That's the.
He did look kind of wild running by though, because he was just jogging with a beard.
Yeah.
I mean, he kind of looked like he climbed a fence, trying to get to the bus or something.
And the hat, because they all had the cool hats on. And that was the thing with the relievers, I guess, the pitchers. That because they all went to Xavi's got a hat guy that sells them hats, and Xavi took all the guys to there after they won the World Series, and they all got hats.
Xavi's been wearing those things for 10
Yeah.
years. He was all on his own until this year.
He finally got enough time in the big leagues to be able to convince all the young dudes that they're cool.
Finally found the right group to buy in.
Now he had Ian Anderson, Matzik, and then Mentor had his cowboy hat on.
Yep.
But anyway, they were quite the group.
Xavi was the first guy I ever saw. I played with him in Toronto in 2012, and he was the first dude that came in with a backpack, unzipped, full TV with an Xbox, and he carried it around everywhere. Played on the plane, on the bus. I've never seen it before. I was like, what is this rig? And he's just like, gamer.
I played some Call of Duty with him. He's a chill dude, but he gets a little heated on the mic sometimes. He
Everybody's
takes
going to
it
be
serious.
Everybody listening to this is going to be looking for him now.
Yep.
Like
Chavi's ahead of his time, man.
Yeah, he is.
He's a cool dude.
I feel great. I feel so happy for him. I mean, here's a guy that's like, a lot of people have just written him off, forgot he was even still pitching. He's in AAA half the season. And he comes up and he was pretty big, played a big part for the Braves. He pitched some big innings for them.
There was a cool stat about him because I was drafted in 2000. When were you drafted?
03.
Out of high school.
03.
So in 2000, I guess there was only like 8 dudes still that were 2000. And he was one of them.
Of all the people.
Yep. It takes a lot, man. I mean, it takes a lot to swallow your pride and go down to AAA. You know, sometimes I look back and wish I would have done it, but guys that can do it and go down there and grind and figure it out and just fight their way back to the big leagues. Yeah. You know, I mean, there's always that chance they wind up in the position he did. Now he's got a ring.
Yeah. Well, Matzek's story, obviously, I'm sure y'all have covered that at nauseum, but that's same thing.
It's insane.
And you know what was so cool is to see, I thought about each of those guys that had a backstory, including Snit and Wash. When they introduced those guys at the rally, at the thing at Truist, they had a red carpet that went all the way from the center field entrance all the way up to the stage, long red carpet.
Yeah.
And they introduced the guys one by one, and they had either their girlfriend, wife, kids. A lot of them had their whole families with them, walking out there like 6 people, entourage.
That'd be so cool.
One by one, they introduced them, and it was so cool. And you saw the genuine look on their faces of none of them had like, I'm big time. Every one of them looked like they were just in awe of the moment. It was like, it was the coolest looking thing. They all appreciated it. Snit, I thought Snit was going to cry, man. He had a grandkid in each hand. And he never even took his, because he wasn't going to let those grandkids go, you know, to wave to the crowd. But they just roared when they introduced Snit. And he had one grandkid in each hand with the Braves jersey on. And
I guarantee you Snit was crying. I mean, 100%
awesome.
Guarantee Snit had some tears more than once.
Yeah.
Process, man.
It's got to feel fake.
To fight it back.
It was awesome. I saw a graphic on how many, the number of seasons that a lot of these guys had in the big leagues, these coaches and Snit, before reaching the World Series. And Wash was 52. 52 seasons of pro ball.
Before he got a ring.
Pro ball, yeah. Can
we just tell the greatest Ron Washington joke story of all time? And you guys have, I would be willing to bet you guys have heard it. But when Tim Hudson tells the story about being in Oakland in spring training, and you got to go get the physical, and part of that physical is getting your eyes checked.
I haven't heard this one.
You haven't heard this?
No, I haven't heard it either.
Well, I cannot overemphasize how hilarious this is. I can't even ruin it. It's so good. But he said, for those that don't know, Ron Washington, I don't believe even like graduated high school, maybe. He just jumped right in. I mean, he was like baseball. That's what you're saying, 50-something years.
Yeah.
So you're going to get the physical, and Huddy says he's leaving the eye exam, and Wash is coming in. And he's like, "What's up, Wash? You going to go get those eyes checked for that cataracts?" And he goes, "Cataract? Man, I drive an Escalade." It is so on point when you meet it like that. That's awesome.
I can hear Huddy telling that story in Huddy's Georgia accent.
Yeah, absolutely.
We talked about Wash all year.
Better than me.
We talked about what a difference it is just to have one of those guys. And it looked like the Braves had quite a few, but one of those people that you're going to laugh every day if you're around a guy like that.
And I'm going to tell you, I mean, every team that you've been on, tell me every team had that guy. And it could be, and the greatest thing about it is that
anybody.
It could be a first base coach. It could be the bench coach. It could be the bullpen catcher. It could be the bullpen coach. It could be like anything. But every team is going to have that one dude. I mean, every single team. And Wash, when I would go down to Truist like 2 or 3 times a summer, but every time Braves walk off the field and one of those bat boys that's still playing, because a lot of those guys are playing college ball, he grabs them and he does the same stuff he does with Ozzie Albies.
Really?
He was that guy you're talking about, the bat boy you're talking about, the black dude. He was doing that stuff with him. Get this, before Game 5 of the World Series, when there's there's hundreds of media on the warning track between the dugout and the field. We're all cramped because we couldn't go on the field. We're all on the warning track. Wash was doing the drills with that kid after he did them with Ozzie and Freddie and everybody before Game 5 of the World Series. That's how, I mean, he did them with that kid all year long.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You can get that instruction many places.
It's awesome. It's awesome. He's just an awesome dude. But the Braves, you're talking about that funny guy, that character. The Braves had at least 3. Guillermo Heredia. He's the piece of work. He's doing the sword thing on the podium at the truest celebration. He had like a big sword this time instead of the plastic ones. And then and Jock Peterson, once they got him, because in the clubhouse, I hear he is hilarious. And then they had Vogt. You can't forget Vogt. Vogt's hilarious, man.
He is.
You saw that story about Vogt the day he did his ref routine. Because, you get to a new team, you're not just going to start being the clown right away. You want to kind of get a feel for the clubhouse and get introduced to everybody. But the day that he busted out his ref routine, which is guaranteed to have the whole clubhouse rolling because he nails it. The day he did that, that was the night he hit 2 homers.
2 homers. Yep.
No way.
Yep. And the guys.
So he was in Tampa when I was there, but in spring training, he hadn't been in the big leagues yet. And so maybe he was like, but he started his career like 0 for 25.
Yeah.
It was like, and it was broken up. So it was like,
come up, 10, suck, get down, sent back down.
0 for 10, sent down. 0 for 5, sent down. I mean, like, so, I'm kind of partial to stories like that. So I kind of was like, who's this guy? And he got back up, all-star team. But he, in spring training, would do he'd do a whole team meeting, whole camp. Yeah. And he would do it as the director of player development. And his, like, I don't know who the dude was, but everyone was dying laughing. So, I mean, dude, he's hilarious.
Yeah.
His Matt Foley, Chris Farley as Matt Foley motivational speaker.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. That one and the referee thing both are just off the charts good.
You know who else did the referee thing? That, like, when he was young, he would tell people, like, I'm going to be a basketball ref in the NBA before, like, he'd say that and then baseball player. Dustin Pedroia.
Really?
He did a good one too?
Same deal, man. But it was like for real. Like, he really wanted to be a ref.
Well, Vogt referees, so he knows all that. He knows he does referee games.
In offseason.
So, yeah. But it's great. God, his Chris Farley's great, though. But
it's good, too, because it's one of those things that, guys do stuff that bother teammates all year long. Whether they're late for things or not picking up their balls in the cage, they just do little etiquette things that piss everybody else on the team off. He calls a foul on him, and he yells it. So it's kind of like a kangaroo court type of thing too, where it puts guys on blast for dumb shit they've been doing during the season.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's a lot like Rossi, but it's with a ref outfit on. So he's blowing a whistle and pointing at him, and when the whole clubhouse explodes when you get called out for something, there's no denying that you've been doing this wrong all year. It's in your face, so it's pretty good.
That's awesome, dude. That's the part that I miss more than anything. All this stuff that we're talking about right now, more than anything.
The laughing, camaraderie.
This team laughed. I mean, we're not in the clubhouse like we normally are yet, but you could see it in the dugout. You could hear them. This team laughs all the time. They were still doing this stuff during right up to the World Series. They were doing the same thing at batting practice. Heredia is still out there doing his shit in batting practice, and guys are just laughing out loud. You could tell they weren't feeling the pressure. If they were at least tempered by that, during BP and all that. They weren't. He kept everybody loose all the time. If the guy didn't get one hit in the postseason, he would have been worth having on a roster spot.
Yep,
that's good.
Stuff matters.
You gotta have that. Absolutely matters. You're with each other way too much if you can't be dumb and have someone calling someone out and everybody. If you don't have any of that, like, you're not gonna win. I've been on plenty of teams that stunk and we were just boring and it wasn't that fun. And it was just baseball, and it's like, that's not enough. You got to have all
too many games. It's too long of a season to just be business all the time.
Well, this morning I heard Mad Dog on MLB Network was talking to a Mets writer about, what they need this offseason, because they got the money they can spend, they've got the payroll and they're going to add more. But it's talking about the big intangible that they don't have. They got to figure it out how to get it, which is what the Braves have, is that winning culture, man. They just don't have it there. And when things went sideways there this year, look how they finished. They just fell apart. They were leading the NL East for most of the season or a lot of the season. And then down the stretch, they were just just fell apart completely.
I think New York's the hardest place to have that. Dealing with the media. The media's in that clubhouse, man, and they are just waiting for anything that you do wrong that they can put in the paper that night and blame it on. So like you were in that Mets clubhouse, Kelly. We had a great team, great group of dudes. But once the media came in, it was like everybody just booked it out of that clubhouse because they didn't want to deal with, it's not like Atlanta where you got 2 or 3 guys that are there every day. They understand it's a long season. There's your regular people, and then there's always just like an extra 30 randoms just snooping around, listening to shit, waiting from for a story.
From NY1 and places like that.
Well, and even more, like there's going to be like at least one that it's got an agenda. And the questions are coming at you in a way that's going to get you to say something you don't want to say. And then they just take that and they just
loaded.
And they'll ask that question to 25 dudes in a row. And if one guy messes up and says, something that kind of slightly throws a teammate under the bus, they're not using the whole quote. They're using that part that looks the worst and running with it. So I think New York's the hardest place to build that.
The guys that are there that have been there for years and years, there aren't many of them, but the writers that are established ones are not like that. But the ones, the ones that are only there for a year or two and then they move on, those are the ones that are using it as a stepping stone or whatever. And they're in there trying to get scoops by asking those loaded questions or baiting guys, that kind of thing.
Yeah. 100%.
They're not in there thinking, I need to have a relationship with these guys because to work with them year after year after year, they're not worried about that. They're just in there trying to get stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and that Mets squad, man, they should have been so good. I mean, you just look at the names and talent, it's obviously like once Noah didn't come back and DeGrom got hurt,
it's going to be tough.
That kind of stuff matters, and they just can, for whatever reason, can't figure out the bullpen right now. But the talent on that team, I mean, are you kidding me? Like, and then you look at what Atlanta lost and how they plugged holes and it worked out, but like. That team had no business winning a World Series.
And Mets lose DeGrom and fall apart. The Braves lose Acuna and they get better.
Yeah. It's crazy. But that's what happens when you take the All-Star game out of Atlanta, Tongue in cheek, but still, like, man, it's just the story couldn't have been written any better overall, but that's part of it.
Yeah. Speaking of how they got better, the moves that Alex Anthopoulos made, last night they gave the Executive of the Year award. And I think it's a joke that the Executive of the Year award is voted on by the other one vote from each team. So his own peers vote for it, right? But they vote on it at the end of the season, like they do the regular season BBWA awards, MVP and all that. So it excludes the postseason.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Alex Anthopoulos did not finish in the top 3. Yeah. I'm sorry, but any Executive of the Year award this year that doesn't include Alex Anthopoulos, if not winning, then at least in the top 3 is a joke.
Yeah.
Nobody did as good a job as that guy did this year. They gave it to the Giants guy because it's regular season only and they won 107 games. So that's understandable. But how do you vote on Executive of the Year and not include postseason? I get that you don't do MVP and Cy Young and all that because you could argue that a player gets a much bigger platform and a chance to sway the vote like you have a big postseason. A lot of guys are going to vote for that player for MVP. But Executive of the Year, isn't your goal
to win the World Series?
To mold a team, not just to get through the postseason and get through the season, get to the postseason, but to win. Right.
Yeah.
So if you're excluding the postseason, well, that's part of the executive's job. That's the whole point, is trying to win the postseason to win the regular season to get to the postseason and have a team you built to win, to continue winning. That I just don't get that. Why, especially when they've only got 30 guys voting this among themselves, unless they want to print some trophy up or whatever and they have to get it done early. Why wouldn't you just do it there at the GM meetings though, before you present the award?
Well, crunch time's the trade deadline. Like that's probably the hardest time of the year for a GM, is deciding whether to go for it or not, who to give up. That's the biggest challenge. The offseason, you got the whole 4 months to be smart about your decisions. But trade deadline, it's like, you have to analyze where your team's at and try to build, it gets decide to go for it. They decided to go for it and get the guys they needed, and they won a World Series. Like that's a pretty big move for an executive.
He had the greatest trade deadline, arguably ever.
Yeah.
He traded for 5 guys
They could all be MVPs too.
And even Rich Rodriguez gave him a solid month where he allowed the bullpen to become established. Now he was big, but the other 4 guys, including Jock, who had got 3 weeks early, but in July, every one of them surpassed expectations and played a huge part in the postseason. Jock had two pinch hit homers in the Milwaukee series. He would have been MVP of the series probably if they'd have given one. Soler was MVP of the NLCS. Of the World Series, and Rosario was MVP of the NLCS. Those are all trade deadline guys.
That's nuts.
And that's not even taking into account Duvall, who led the league in RBIs.
And won a Gold Glove just now.
And won a Gold Glove.
I didn't even think about it like
he
that.
Got one.
That's all those guys.
All those guys that came in July. It's insane. For him not to get executive year, it just makes the award look like, who gives a shit? If he
feel
didn't
like
win
that
it,
with every award right now after watching the Braves win it. This all seems so trivial after watching the team win the World Series.
And it's somehow you don't get
don't give a shit.
Most fans don't get too frustrated by getting snubbed for awards because you won a World Series, man. Take the rest of them.
The Snitker thing, I'm like, do you think he cares one bit about that stupid award when he's got a trophy?
But it is ironic though that in the year they win it all finally, they don't have a finalist, the top 3 finalists for any of the 4 major awards. That's like the first time that's happened in a long time since they started announcing finalists. Not Rookie of the Year, which you could have argued Ian Anderson belonged in there, but there were some good rookies. The dude India is going to win it hands down. Should be about unanimous from the Reds, Jonathan India. Manager of the Year, because again, they don't include postseason. If they did, Snit would win it hands down, but Kepler's going to be unanimous, and it should be based on regular season. But Snit should, but even if you don't include postseason, shouldn't Snit be a top 3 for what he did with this team? They were under 500.
Everything they faced, yeah.
You lose Acuna, you lose Ozuna, you don't never get Soroka back. They revamped the outfield, and Snip's got to manage that.
Yeah, I didn't see all this, so that's just like shocking to me. And talking about the Giants, when they lost to the Dodgers, I saw a lot of quotes from those guys talking about how you can't take away what we did this year. We did this year's amazing, 100, whatever wins. And I remember reading it at the time and thinking, no, like y'all just lost. You didn't even make it out of the division series.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And we're still giving them out. Now we're giving them the regular season awards. It's like, who gives a crap?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Like it does not matter unless you advance to the World Series. Even if you lose the World Series, you're better than them.
Yeah.
From a player standpoint, for sure, because you play those 162, you could win 120 games. If you lose in the first round, you're going home pissed.
Yeah.
Cool as it is to go to the World Series, and even losing it was, I'll never forget being there and that part. But it's kind of ends like the Braves this year, like those teams that win, they go back and have like reunions and celebrations.
Yeah.
The winner, the guy that won the National League or wins the American League and loses the World Series, we don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna see in New York with a celebrating a pennant or whatever. That's not gonna happen. So you win 109 games or whatever, however many the Giants won. There's no celebration for that down the road. Who gives a crap?
But you're right. The Braves went to
I don't get it.
5 World Series in the 90s, 5, and they won one of them. Nobody gives a shit about the other 4 teams
at all.
Nobody has reunions and all that and talks about with, the worst to first. That's an exception because they went from worst to first. So that is still a glorious year. But you don't bring back the 91 team, that worst to first team. They don't have reunions for that team. Only the 95 team. And now this 2021 team.
Yep.
And also Freddie won last year, MVP and the Hank Aaron Award. Acuna won almost unanimous Rookie of the Year a couple of years before that.
Snit's won Manager of the Year.
Right. Snit won Manager of the Year. All that pales compared to this, though. Nobody cares. This team doesn't have a finalist in any award, but it doesn't matter.
Nobody cares.
You won the World Series, man.
Just like whatever. Who cares? After
you
win the trophy.
And you're reminded when you do win the World Series how unimportant the individual stuff is compared to this.
Yeah.
Which is such a cool thing. And for guys that are, I wish like crazy, don't you wish, that when you were like a rookie or in the first 2 to 3 years of your career, if you could have gone to a World Series.
Oh, it would have changed everything.
To taste what that is, that team success. Changed
even just tasting the playoffs for the first time. Like the first time we went to the playoffs in 2010, I came back the next year and you don't care about your stats at all. And that's a really good thing, but
Great.
You know, it's like you're playing those first 162 after you've been to the playoffs, and you got one thing in mind: is getting back to those games and feeling that pressure and succeeding on that stage. Versus, you know, having a great season's cool, but just still go home and it's like, all right, we got to try again next year.
Dude, and on the flip side, there's really, after you've experienced that, there's nothing worse than being on a team where it's like you finish a season and it's about, did you make an all-star team? What's your arbitration going to look like? You know, you're a free agent. What did you get? Like all those things when teams are just like split at the end of the season and they got their own agendas, man. It's just like I was saying earlier, it's a boring team. It's just baseball, and it's you can't wait for the season to get over. It doesn't even matter. It gets old.
Can you imagine how big this is? I mean, how big this success at such a young age is going to be for Austin Riley?
Oh yeah,
for Ian Anderson, and he pitched big games in that, and he pitched a terrific game in the World Series, a huge one. For Max Fried pitching that Game 6 that he did. All of a sudden, he's elevated up there with Glavine status practically for six scoreless innings these days. Is like 8 when Matt Glavine did it. I mean,
and those trickle down to the next wave. So you're going to have the kids in spring training. You know, we should ask Moilo and Kelsey to come on and give us the prospect list, whoever that is, and let us know. But that's going to trickle into spring training because now you walk into a spring training as an Atlanta Brave for the first time, and it's world champion, and there's Max, and there's whoever is on the team, and it's like it's a different deal, big time different deal.
We need to have Chipper on again, and we can ask Chipper what it was like because he won it in '95. He won it early in his career, kind of like Austin Riley has, real similar. And I mean, I bet it had a huge effect on Chipper's career, and then he's able to pass that all along to the younger guys. But I mean, you could see Austin Riley grow before your eyes this year. But then in the World Series, he's being interviewed after every game, and he's so comfortable now and established all of a sudden compared to what a deer in the headlights that he was at the start of the year. But all these guys, having gone through this, they're going to come to spring training next year with one goal, to win the World Series, and not just saying it, because before they say it, but you don't think they really probably thought they had a chance, you know? In July, this team had – nobody on this team thought they had a chance to win a World Series, except maybe Charlie Morton, you know? Because he's been there and he knew the talent was there. But even he admitted he didn't know if they were going to put it all together and go on that run they needed to go on. He knew it was there, that if they could go on that run, that it was all there. But even he wondered if they'd do it. But he knew the pieces were there. But these other guys, they had nothing to base it on.
Yeah.
Nope.
Even Freddie didn't have anything to base it on.
Even for me, like just talking about how important the winning is and experiencing that. I went to the playoffs with the Braves in 10. We missed it that last day of the postseason or the season in 11, went again in 12, went again in 13, went again to the wild card game with Oakland in 14. And then Oakland traded Samardzija. They traded Josh Donaldson. We made a bunch of trades and downgraded the team. And I remember getting to spring training in 2015 and looking around like, I don't think we're doing this thing. Like it seemed so pointless from day one of spring training. And then you start playing to try to make it onto a winner at the deadline if possible. But not looking at a team and knowing like we're not winning this division. You know, it was hard to motivate yourself after going to the playoffs over and over and over.
No doubt. Yeah.
And this team, I mean, you could look around at baseball. You could say the Dodgers because they have $250 million payroll, and the Yankees are going to spend more again this year. The Yankees haven't been to the World Series since 1990, since 2009. Yeah, 2009. Yeah. The Braves have not been in over a decade with the money that they've spent.
Yep.
You can't buy it. You can't buy the thing we're talking about. The most important thing. You can't buy that.
Here's another one.
That division's different.
That's a gauntlet.
As great as the Dodgers have been for the past half a decade, the Dodgers have not won a World Series. The Braves have won 2 World Series since the Dodgers last won in a full season. The Dodgers won last year with a 60-game season. True. But that's their first one since 88, 89, 88.
Yeah.
The Braves have won 2 in that time.
So Anthopoulos deserves so much credit, and he came from LA.
Phenomenal.
And obviously he's a smart dude, and he's done this thing right. And I think that there's going to be some sustained success. But Andrew Friedman was in Tampa, and I was there. That dude is the smartest dude in baseball. Yep. There's a reason why people go there. They come back and they turn like Anthopoulos. Like that team will always be, to me, the favorite they're always going to be the favorite. I mean, they've got too much. They got too much talent. They got too smart of people, too much money. So for sure, that's who you want to be. The Braves are going to try to want to be, and they can do it. I mean,
which is what made this run so much better, so much more convincing. Because if the Braves had not gone through the teams that they did, people would have said, "Yeah, you only had to beat." No, they beat the Dodgers, who just beat the Giants in a 5-game series.
And it was convincing too. It wasn't,
and
like
it was convincing. They were a better team than the Dodgers at that stage of the game. They were a better team than the Dodgers.
And they didn't play a game 7. They didn't play a game 7.
No,
at any point.
They were better. The Dodgers had a couple of injuries. The Braves had a couple of injuries, but the Braves, as constituted when they met, were better than the Dodgers.
Yep.
The pitching was shockingly better than the Dodgers. Because
I thought Snit outmanaged
Snit badly outmanaged Dave Roberts. Yeah. Dave Roberts did so many things with that pitching staff that just I thought he's totally misused the pitching staff. Yeah. But they didn't overcome the big injuries that they had. The Braves did.
I got a question. I mean, what is up with the pitching? The way that they use pitchers, I don't see how that's the most optimal way to get the most out of it.
They've gone overboard, I think.
Well, for me, it's every time you push the button and bring a new guy in, I know what he's supposed to do. But the thing that for me that nobody, when you look at the analytical people say a pitcher's only hot until he's not. And I see a lot of pitchers get yanked while I'm looking at, what it's like to be in a dugout when you're facing a pitcher and the whole team saying we got no shot. Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. Every time those guys get taken out, the other team, the lineup on the other team says, shit, we got a shot now because I'll take anybody over Eovaldi or Blake Snell, guys you've seen get yanked early. The exception for me was the Ian Anderson one because he was throwing a lot of balls and grinding this year. But even that, Snit took him out at 75 pitches.
Yeah.
And his explanation was good. The explanation I don't like is, third time through the order just blindly.
Right.
For me, the playoffs are different. That might work over 162. But I thought Snit did an amazing job of using his gut with all his moves throughout the entire postseason and kind of deciding, going off feel of the game. Because there was times where he left, people could say he left Charlie in too long. I didn't think so. I thought a guy just hit a good pitch.
Yeah,
but
me too.
Overall, I think it's so hard to predict what your reliever is going to bring that day. And every time you push that button, there's a chance you bring in a reliever that's cold and just having an off day. Because I've warmed up a million times. 1 out of 3 times you warm up, you're like, fuck, I don't have shit today. And the same thing's expected out of you, you know, and that happens. It's not predictable. You don't know. It could be sleep or whatever it is, but you never know what's going to happen. And I think teams have gotten so comfortable just assuming the guy's going to be locked in and take that, what the current pitcher is doing for granted.
I agree with that, man. I mean, just as much as hitting off of these guys, like what you said, if a guy's got that stuff, man, like let him go. I mean, think about if we would have had that same model in 15 with the Mets, and DeGrom, Harvey, and Noah and Bart went 8 innings, all the time. Yeah. It was like a regular occurrence, like 8 innings, 1 run, 8 innings, no runs, and it wasn't very many hits, and it was a lot of strikeouts. So you
4 out of 5 days, you had your shower shoes on in the bullpen.
Yeah. And that's I know the names, and they were horses, but some of these pitchers are pretty dang good, man. And let them go and see what they got. And on the flip side, what I was going to say is that's hitting. Well, also playing D, like you can watch who's locked in, and then I always felt like there was like unwritten rules of how to use bullpen guys. Like very rarely does a guy come in and throw a full inning where they're just go sit, and then have to go back out and it's like, so now they're bringing in guys to get this 1 out in the 9th, or not the 9th, but 1 out in the 6th, and they want to, knowing they're going to bring them back in the 7th.
Yeah,
like,
that was the hardest transition to the American League for me. It was like, Bobby was great at getting you in. You have success, he yanks you, and you're ready for tomorrow. Because it is when you come in bases loaded, 1 or 2 outs, stadium's going crazy. You can't match that high. Right? You get out of that jam, you go sit on the dugout, and it's like you just sit there and wait. And then when you jog back out and that first throw just feels like shit every time. I felt like when the American League, it was like you got stretched to failure versus in the National League, you got in, you had success, you were riding high, they yanked you out of the game, you're feeling good and ready to go tomorrow. And I think a lot more teams are thinking, they can just stretch guys and use them whenever they want. And they're not giving credit to the circumstance surrounding the usage.
Yeah. They're not all Tyler Matzik.
Bro, yeah. Well, what he's overcome.
He was ridiculous in the postseason. That guy cannot get enough credit for him, what he did in the postseason. His team doesn't have a chance without Tyler Matzik in the postseason.
I thought it was crazy. I remember in the middle of the season when they started checking dudes between innings, like checking hats and belts, and his spin rate like plummeted. Yeah. And he stopped having as much success for, I don't know, probably a week at the most.
Yeah. We all thought he was going to be a victim of spin rate. And Luke too. We thought because he had a couple of bad outings, and they both made adjustments and were both incredible again.
Yeah.
But Tyler was, I mean, when they give Fireman of the Year, he should get strong consideration.
He should have it hands down for what again, postseason should matter if you ask me. I mean, I look at it as like a chance to earn extra credit for those awards.
Especially for a reliever, what you got to do in the postseason. He pitched all but 2 games, man.
So hard. They wrote
all but 2, and I think 4 or 5 of those were 2+ inning stints.
Yeah. I thought about it. I was like, if they gave you give it an MVP for each round, but if they gave a full postseason MVP, because each one of the dudes that Jock and then Rosario and then Soler, they weren't as big of factors in each series. Right. If they gave a full postseason MVP, which I think would be cool, I think Matzik would get it.
Matzik or Freddie would get it if they gave for full postseason.
Freddie was pretty damn good too.
Freddie had 5 home runs in the whole postseason.
Yeah.
There was somebody better in each of the 3 rounds than Freddie, position guys. But Matzik across the board was unbelievable. And the other guy was Will Smith.
Yeah.
My God. Yeah. He had 6 saves in the postseason, 6 out of 6, didn't allow an earned run. I mean, his opponent's average and OPS were ridiculous.
He was automatic with like no drama either.
No drama.
Yeah, exactly. It was
didn't
like
punch out a lot either. I think it was 1 or 2 strikeouts.
Yeah, nobody else had more than 1 save for any team in the postseason. I know that a lot of that's how guys are used and everything, and a lot of the games were blowouts. But nevertheless, he had 6 of 6 saves.
For me, what Matzik did was what Will Smith did is it's clean. It's a great job, but Matzik never knowing when he's going to come in and getting thrown into that situation. Bases loaded, second and third, no outs, striking out the side, like that type of stuff. For me, if you don't have that guy, like what Hader was doing for Milwaukee when they went deep, if you don't have that guy, your postseason falls apart if you can't get out of those game-changing situations. So for me, what he did was a lot more valuable than Will, even though Will did a great job.
Right.
Can't argue that. How are we going to follow up, Dave, with Snit's proclamation of the bullpen going to Hawaii? Are we going to be able to
that was tremendous.
If that happens?
That was
he'll do it.
He'll do it. Wait to see if that happens.
That was tremendous. Sure. McGurk should give him his plane. Go out. Let's send the whole group out there, the bullpen out to Hawaii in a private jet.
That was awesome.
That was awesome.
Here's a question for you that for some reason every time I watch Freddie and see what he's doing, because I also got to come on and say that I was wrong. Remember we talked about Freddie back in like May, and I was like, he'll be fine, but I don't think he'll get up to his career number.
And he did.
And he went over and got 300.
He was right there with slugging and OPS and OBP too.
We were trying to compare his down year to what Chipper's one down year back in the day, and it's like nope. So that brings me. So here's a question: is at any point when do we start talking about Freddie's career being exceeding Chipper's? I mean, they're on the same path.
I know you got to do it though.
I think if he has about 3 more Freddie years, he's going to have to do it though.
We all know that's his kind of Freddie's kind of. That's what he's reaching. Right. He has that Chipper in his sights a little bit. Like we know that's what motivates him to an extent.
Right.
He talked about he's got the MVP, got the World Series.
Right. Chipper, I think he needs to have about 3 more Freddie years to get up where Chipper was, though. If you just look at the sheer home runs, Chipper was over 300 from both sides. OBP,
hard to compare.
400. Chipper was 300, 400, 500, in the slash line.
Defense, playing good D.
Yeah.
Leadership. I mean, it's crazy to have seen Freddie as a rookie in 2010 and watch the whole thing. That's the first career that I think is a real Hall of Fame career that I've been able to watch from day one happen. Yeah. And it's crazy just to see it develop and start even having a conversation of this funny looking rookie that came up, funny dude. All of a sudden you're putting him in the same sentence as Chipper Jones, and it's not ridiculous.
And Chipper won a batting title at 36, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Freddie will
But he
do
wasn't
something
playing
like that
it.
too, though.
He wasn't playing every day at that point either, though. Freddie's at about the point where Chipper started going from playing 158 to 162 games to started getting hurt and missing part. Freddie's about that age now.
Yeah.
I think Freddie might have gone. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, if he holds it together, because the last couple of years, Freddie's been healthy after those couple of years where he had the freak injuries, like getting hit in the wrist by, breaking his wrist, that kind of thing.
Has Freddie, what's like his worst year? I mean, was it back when he was younger and only hit like 19 homers, or 17? He had like real, but he still probably hit 3.
His power got sapped a little that year. He had the broken wrist and he came back in only like 7 weeks. So he had a couple of years where his power was down a little bit, but his average has never been.
Never, right?
He's never struggled.
I can't think of a time when Freddie's, other than this year for the first couple months, I can't think of a time where Freddie's been like bad for a long time.
And Chipper remember told him, because Chipper was the one that brought up that discussion. Chipper told him early on when Freddie's batting, more than a month into the season, Freddie's batting like 200, 190 something. And Chipper's like, hey, I had a year where I hit 245, with 30 bombs. And Freddie tells us, but I want to tell him, I don't want to hit 245 with 30 bombs. And we're thinking, well, you might have to accept it, dude. But nope. Yeah. We ended up the year right where he normally is.
That's that David Ross quote. He told me one of my first years was water finds its level. Never panic. Your talent, what you bring to the table, it'll all even out. And you look around the league and it's like, maybe Yelich is a guy that water didn't find his level. But most of the guys, you watch how they start. Some guys start out, they're hitting 340 into July and they finish right back at 285 where they normally are, something like that. Right. It's crazy. There's no fluke stuff in a major league season. It's too long.
Here you go. Here's your Freddie's second year, his age 22 season, second full season. He hit 259. That was his worst year, but he had 33 doubles, 23 homers, 94 ribbies, and a 796 OPS. That was his worst year.
I was looking at 2015 too.
Yeah, 276.
Yeah.
276, 841 OPS though. Yeah. 18 homers. Yeah.
18 homers.
That was one of those years. Yeah. That was year he's hurt.
Yeah. He played 118 that year.
And then he only played 117 2 years later when he broke his wrist. And everybody's starting to say, oh, he can never stay healthy. We're going, this is not, but he's not having those kind of injuries that you can say a guy can't stay healthy. He's having injuries where he like gets hit by a fastball,
Yeah. Hip that keeps flaring up, or like Buxton Buxton has some random injuries, but he also has some real ones.
Or Yelich's back.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because Freddie, since then, after everybody was saying, he couldn't play, he couldn't stay healthy. Since then, led the league with 162 games played in 2018, 158 games played in 2019, all 60 games played in 2020, and 159 games played with a league high 695 plate appearances this year in his age 32 season or 31 season.
How's he only been an all-star 5 times?
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
I can't wait to see just where he goes from here, just because he just seems so consistent. Like he looks young, like he doesn't look old. He's not aging in front of us. He's
moving the same.
Like he just looks like he's just going to keep on rolling, just keeps on hitting. And the crazy thing is I remember when my last year and feeling the way that like pitchers' velocities were just like 98 all of a sudden. And I'm thinking like, I'm leaving at the right time. Like this game's about to get real hard. And everyone just flipped around and like, that was the year he hit like 360. And Markakis was raking and like everyone was hitting ridiculous. And it's like hitting just all of a sudden got easy, but it didn't. But I mean, he just has turned it into this ho-hum, just going to get my knocks.
You're talking about how he looked weird as a kid. He had that pudgy body. He wasn't fat, but he had that baby fat on him. His face, his body.
Bad haircut. He had a bad haircut.
It was pasty looking and all that. Yeah. And you look at him now and like he's like a late bloomer, because now he's like, but he's not all ripped. He doesn't come to spring training every year and you're wondering what he's going to look like. He looks the same. He comes in, he's in good shape, but he's not all ripped, and you're going, okay, can he stay healthy? He doesn't look like Stanton where he's going to pull, he's going to pull a oblique, swinging too hard. He's just Freddie, he's just this perfectly proportioned, kind of like Chipper was, Chipper was real big one year, but otherwise Chipper was never, he didn't come to spring training ripped. He was like 6'4" and just kind of proportioned.
That's that baseball body, man. You can't be too lean and play 162.
Oh man, 100%. 100%. God, those guys that I remember playing with, that young guys come in that could be on magazines, and that was like a big focus. Their diet, their exercise, their nutrition, and it was like,
Yeah,
you got to have a little bit of fat in your belly, just a little bit.
that's
A
what
little
Bobby
bit.
said. Bobby said you can't pull fat.
5%. Can't be 4
Bobby,
and 5% body fat and go out
yeah.
there and play baseball because it's too long and too hard.
That's probably. I look back at that. I'm like, I wish I would have tried getting fat before I retired. I wish I would have taken an off season, just eat ice cream and put on about 20 pounds of fat, taking that body to spring training and seen how it felt throwing.
By the way, Chipper. Speaking of having Chipper on, Chipper was on Jason Stark's Starkville podcast, so everybody should listen to that because it's just Chipper. So he's on there. He talks about everything. Talks about Austin Riley. Talks about Freddie's contract. So listen to Jason's Starkville podcast for sure. And speaking of bodies, man, you look at the relievers on this team. None of them are those kind of guys that are ripped either. If you look, and they all stayed healthy for the whole year. They didn't really have anybody with significant injuries all season. And they had some guys that put in a lot of innings, man, a lot of appearances. Yeah. And you look at the guys like Matzik, you look at Luke, you know, at Will Smith, they're big guys. Will's big guy, but he's not all ripped up and shredded at all.
You can't move. You know, I don't want to say you can't, but it's if you're born like that, like if you're just born shredded, like Jay Hay was just born a specimen, like he's just built different. But if you're born like that, it's one thing. But I think when you manipulate and work out and chase that certain physique, and you're changing your body's natural Syndergaard, but Syndergaard gets hurt a lot, you know, and he
all
works
the time.
hard.
That's what I'm saying.
He's always in the gym,
always hurt,
getting big. You know, all the guys that
for him.
I think you just so baseball movements are all about relaxing into positions, and when you shorten muscles up and tighten things up and beat up your ligaments lifting weights, it's a slippery slope.
I saw this, man. I saw Kevin Brown have the most dominant season I've ever seen from a pitcher that I covered with the Marlins in 96, 97. One of those 2 years or both of those 2 years, threw a no hitter in 97.
Heard he was jacked
at Candlestick.
Yeah.
But he had this perfect pitcher's body, kind of like Smoltz, wide shoulders, but he wasn't all shredded. He was about 200 pounds, 210, about 6'3", and he had that bowling ball sinker. I mean, he was unbelievable. That guy was the most dominant pitcher I've seen, including Maddox, because that was a different kind of dominant. But Kevin Brown was overpowering. But then he got that big contract with the Dodgers. He went out. I'm not going to say he did roids because I don't have any proof of that. But he added about 20 pounds of muscle because he wanted to get even more dominant. Never the same after that. He broke down. He was never the same again after that. He had the perfect pitcher's body, lean, muscular, but not ripped up. And he just ruined it.
Charlie's got the perfect pitcher's body for me.
Yeah.
Yes, he had a body like Charlie Morton that if you design it in a lab for pitching. Yeah. That's what Kevin Brown looked like, Charlie Morton. Real similar bodies.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I've heard Pujols talk about it with hitters. Like you got to have a little tummy. Like not bad. It's not like you just don't want that like magazine physique, really.
Yeah,
you're not gonna
6 bricks. There's
no pop, man. You're not gonna have any power behind you there. You think so? You think you're strong and all this, but no.
It's funny, man. My first off season retired, I was like, all right, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm gonna get shredded. And I think this probably plays into it. Is just your energy reserve to get through 162. But I did like, you know, all this crazy dieting and CrossFit workouts and stuff. And I got down to like 6-7% body fat. The remote would be like 8 feet away from me on the couch. I couldn't get myself to go get that thing. I was so drained. So you think about being that lean, you know, and trying to get through a season, like you need some fat and you need some sugar stored up to have that power and that explosiveness every day.
I mean, he looked like B-Mac, man. He had that body that was like, he was never ripped up and shredded. You looked at B-Mac and you go, this guy's a great player, but he never rotate. He played the hardest position there is in the heat in Atlanta and played like a lot of games.
Yep.
And he never really had serious injuries. He played through the knee thing until he had to have surgery after a season. But I mean, he had one of those bodies and Gaddis
could go up and down the line for sure.
Gaddis was a huge guy, but he wasn't all shredded like a bodybuilder. He was just a big man, but he had some fat on him.
It'll be real interesting to see what kind of longevity, you know, especially a lot of the hard throwing pitchers that are coming up. what kind of longevity the guys that are really starting to train for velocity and power and do all these, because guys get after it in the off season now. They take 2-3 weeks off, and then they're hitting the gym, they're squatting, lifting, benching. And, I think the power transfers in a sense where their velocity goes up, they're hitting bombs, but it'll be interesting to see the longevity that guys have that have these routines. And I think the biggest key is making the adjustment and knowing when it's time to back off, and you've got your strength and now it's time to be mobile.
The tendons and ligaments just can't handle that year after year after year. With the pitching, especially these guys, the pitchers that get big like Syndergaard. Yeah. Muller was the guy that was scaring me how big he was getting, ripped. Yeah. But I think he kind of backed off a little bit. He's just a normal, huge guy.
So did Soroka.
Yeah, Soroka said, he learned that he needed to back off a little bit, those workouts. And he came the next year, he wasn't nearly as ripped up. But, his injury had nothing to do with that.
That's just a random.
Got to.
Well, there's as a fan now and like sitting at home watching and being a kind of casual observer of baseball, it's like a different deal when you, like, I used to just always pride myself, and I think guys would pride themselves inside the game of having some longevity in the game.
Yeah.
And now as a fan, you kind of, I don't know that you care about that as much. So you kind of want to see guys have really great seasons. Yeah. Those are the guys that get talked about all the time. Is just like, we just talked about a handful of guys that's like, they've only got like a couple years. There's guys that are like flash in the pan year, and then they're out of the game. You look at service time, and it's like 5-6 years. But things like that. So, there's two sides to everything here, getting shredded up, getting into this, workout and having this awesome season, and then kind of learning how to adjust, like you said, and figuring out your body and how to maintain. Cause, like a Noah, like I wonder what Noah's career is going to look like the rest of the way. And I can actually remember David Wright telling him, Noah's a little chirpy, by the way, Dave. He's not the guy that's going to fall in line with some of the he definitely is anti-unwritten rule, but just in terms of a locker room kind of veteran, he didn't he wanted to skip a few steps. Yeah. And David Wright lit into him more than one occasion. And I remember one time in particular was, I've seen 10 of you come and go. And, at that, you look at Noah and you're like, he's had a good career. He ain't been in the game that long. Yeah. He's probably got, I think he's a free agent. So he's got 6 years. Made a lot of money, so everything's a great accomplishment. But if that goal is 10 years, or if that goal is Hall of Fame or whatever,
nobody's going to remember him right now. If he doesn't have another great year, nobody's going to remember him in 10 years.
Yeah. You got to see what these guys are going to look like. Come in throwing 100, okay, but dude, what about the next 8 years of your career? Or guys that are position players that come in and have these. We're seeing unprecedented amounts of 21, 22-year-old guys having monster seasons, just taking the game over by storm. Chris Bryant could be one that comes to mind. It's a little bit further down the line. Tore this place up, but now he's a very good major leaguer, but he's not what he was, right?
Right.
So what do you do? How do you grow into that?
Well, you know what? I think the Mets, they missed a guy like David Wright. David Wright would have been so good on that team this year. The leadership that he provided, that team needed him this year.
Yeah, when they were booing their fans.
Yes. Yes. He's the one guy that had enough gravitas and seniority there that could have maybe brought Baez down to earth, and Lindor made Lindor maybe relax a little early on. But he just
talked him through the pressure.
Yeah, I think he freaked out when he started slow, and the fans were all over him.
Well, I think that group of guys this year reminded me an awful lot of the Mets from 2004, 2005, before David became the veteran, when he was still young. Because remember those teams back then, they had the same issues. Even with Wagner and Glavine, I think we're actually on the team. And I remember Wagner getting interviewed and going off about how he's answering all the questions and all these other guys are running away.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So it kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I do remember that.
The way they were behaving, the way they were acting.
It's hard for a pitcher to do that, man. We've talked about that. It's hard for a pitcher to be that guy,
And it's hard in New York, because it's like what Kelly's talking. If you come up in New York and you have a good season, you're the man in the biggest, coolest city in the United States. You're the way those egos for young guys blow up in New York is unlike anywhere else, any other team. Maybe LA, maybe the Dodgers, but it's still not that concentrated where you're walking up and down the streets in New York. I remember going to dinner or something with Syndergaard, and it was like, As soon as we walked in, every head in the whole restaurant turned and looked at him. All the crowd just parted and letting him walk through, you know? So it's like it's the hardest place ever to have a guy not let any of that get to his head and have that ego blow up.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because you had the two extremes on how to deal with that. Cause nobody's ever dealt with it in the modern era like Derek Jeter did. Because
Right.
Mickey Mantle and them, that was a different era. They didn't have social media. They couldn't have done the things they did if everybody had camera phones. Derek Jeter, what he pulled off is miraculous. It's miraculous. Impossible. And it even makes his Hall of Fame credentials even the greater that he did it without ever having anybody
in New York
do anything untoward in New York. Yeah. But the other extreme of that is the Dark Knight. Look what happened to him. He has a little success, and all of a sudden, you know, he's late getting to games. He's running it. You know, he gets hurt, and then he gets booed, and then he handles it. You know, I mean, he's went the other direction. So, I mean, that's, yeah.
You could see the problem developing, but what am I going to say if, you know, I go over to the Mets and I got a 56 ERA? What am I going to say to a guy that's the toast of the town?
Right.
You know, so it's like that service time goes out the window in certain cities.
I've seen David pull him aside and have those conversations. It's just some guys are unreachable in certain situations, and it doesn't matter who's talking to them. But
and that,
you know, it's too bad.
And that goes back to the chemistry we've talked about so many times. And this year, I mean, we talked about it a lot, but you always think there's people that listen and go, roll their eyes and go, yeah, chemistry, whatever. This year, this Braves team is the one that will be held up for a long time as the classic example of what happens when you have great chemistry. And you have a team that's better than the sum of its parts. Yeah, they had a lot of great players on this team, but they were better than they performed better than some teams that had more talent, like the Dodgers.
Yep. Nobody gave them a shot either.
No. And they performed better. They were a better team because all the pieces fit together. And that's Alex and that's Snit leading it like perfectly. And that's Freddie leading it in the clubhouse, you know, and adding guys that fit perfectly into the chemistry in July instead of disrupting it, instead of worrying about their arbitration coming up. Instead of Jock Peterson complaining about going from an everyday guy for those first couple of weeks when he came over to going to a utility or to a platoon role once Rosario came off the DL. But you never heard Jock complain about it publicly. Nope. You know, and here's a guy that's going to hit free agency, and he could have complained about it, said he wants to play every day, but he never did. You know, so
nothing's going to turn me into a grumpy old player more than people talking about chemistry doesn't matter.
Yeah.
No. Dude, that's where I draw the line.
That's it, man. I'm going to be just that grumpy dude if you start. That was kind of where it was at the end of my career. I mean, that's where you're looking at the switch of let's get rid of some older dudes and start going younger. And it's sometimes you're looking at it like, how's that working out for you? Trying to fill 2 or 3 roster spots with a combination of 15 guys that have no business playing in the major leagues. And not understanding that not only are you not getting the same production experience, but you're not getting a constant presence or, you know, whatever it is in that culture department or in that chemistry department.
Yeah, a guy like Eric Kinski, man, that will call out anybody on the team, and he's been through it. And young guy comes up, he helps him on the bench. You know, he tells him how to accept a role. You know, there's been guys on the Braves the last few years that we noticed weren't too happy with a bench role. You know, they wanted to be playing. Young guys, and there's guys that can talk you through those emotions and explain to you realistically where your career's at. Like, you're not looking at being a superstar anymore. Like you need to accept whatever role you can get and get on this train, because it'll go on without you.
Yeah, I think Markakis, man, he wasn't on this team. He retired, but God, if you ask the players that were around through the whole, what he did for the culture of this team, was huge.
I could tell you Snit right away. I talked to him about it, and he's like, Markakis is the greatest thing that ever happened to my career, because he said all the BS that, you know, it probably was referencing Acuna, a couple of the things he was doing where he would hit a ball off the wall and end up, you know, at first base or whatever. And he would say, Nick would just pop his head and be like, I got it. Don't worry about it. I got it. And he'd just move on. And Snit's like, this is great. I don't have to deal with any of this.
Yeah, it's so much better coming from a player.
Because you got somebody that recognizes it and says, I'll just go, I'll go take care of that. And someone's going to listen to him too, you know. That's the other part of it. You can't be just some whatever that's not accountable to yourself, and, you know, no one's going to listen to you if you're like that. I mean, you have to have that special guy.
And Markakis and Freddie and B-Mac for the year he was here, they had and they took it upon themselves to make sure these young guys, both what you just said, they reminded them how to play the game right, but they also made those guys feel comfortable and not walking on eggshells. So they had this team had the wherewithal or the foresight to make, they knew they were going to lean on these guys like Acuna and Ozzie. They needed them. So they made them feel comfortable from day one and not walking on eggshells, not going through all the bullshit harassment and all that, and hazing and all that, because they needed them right from the start. And those guys play the game right. I mean, so you can be a flamboyant player like Acuna and still play the game right, which they did. Acuna, there were a couple exceptions where he didn't run out of ball, but he hustled his ass off for the most part, and he got extra bases. He went for extra base. The people just remember him getting called out by Freddie and by BMAC or whatever. But those were productive, man. Those weren't negatives. Those were huge positives for this team that helped to get where it is now. Yeah,
people don't understand how tough professional athletes are, where you can have a teammate call you out, tell you messed up, and get in your grill and deliver a message pretty firmly.
Yeah.
And then you guys sit at a table and eat dinner together 5 minutes later, and you're over it. And, those things blow up outside the clubhouse, but
social
in the clubhouse, you turn the page on that stuff in a matter of minutes.
That's what they don't understand.
Yeah.
They're so it's such a sensitive world now where everybody gets their feelings hurt and everybody, gets in trouble for saying the wrong thing or whatever. Those rules don't apply in a clubhouse though, man. It's still the way it used to be. And you can call guys names that you'll never use in public.
Yeah.
And they'll get over it. And it's part of it. And they laugh about it. But they'll take the message, they'll take it constructively, and they'll move on, and they don't hold it. It's not, your feelings don't get hurt like they do.
No, you're over it. You're
in
over
other walks of life.
And it's every day. It's not just once in a while. It's every day. You're used to it.
Yeah, you also know who the older guys, the veterans that are doing the calling out or those conversations. You're going to find out real quick who they know are the actual future players too, because if they're not messing with you,
they don't care.
You're probably going back on that bus to Gwinnett next week, so we're not going to put a lot of effort into you.
If you want to be a manager or a coach, and you want to know like what the players think, just take a look at who they're talking to and who they're inviting, who they're putting their arm around, or who they're yelling at. And if they're not, then it's just like, you're not worth our time.
Like
that's a good point. It's a good point.
We were in the clubhouse, up until the pandemic, and you'd see Markakis, who people thought he was this, from outside. You're just looking at the interviews and him never smiling, and you're thinking he's this old veteran who hates these young guys. It couldn't be further from the truth. He had a great relationship with Ozzie, with Acuna. In a clubhouse before the game, he's over there talking to these guys. They're laughing and stuff, and they're working and they're working out because Nick was always working out. So he's in the weight room talking to these guys. But all people see on TV is he doesn't smile like Acuna does and Ozzie does and Dansby does or whatever. But they had a great relationship with Ozzie. Ozzie would go over to his line and be in his ear all the time asking him shit. So those guys were just huge parts of what this success now. With the ones, some that aren't here now, like Tyler Flowers and Markakis especially, and BMAC in the year he was here. I mean, they all had a huge hand in this thing all coming together this year, because this year it was the epitome of it. They were all on the same page this year, man.
Yeah, that's what it takes.
They had the right blend, man.
And the coaching staff.
Right blend.
And the coaching staff is just so good. I mean, the
couldn't put a better mix together.
And Walt Weiss and EY and then Snit let delegate into those guys. It just all came together. And you want to bring back as many pieces of it as you can next year and keep it together. And that's why I can't even imagine a scenario where they let Freddie go over some dollars, because they should have got it done before now, because it's going to cost more money than it would have before. I don't know why. Liberty Media, I am convinced, did not give them the approval to sign into the contract it was going to take until they saw the earnings reports come in the last 2 quarters, because they've been off the charts. But now it's going to cost a lot more because they won a World Series. His agent knows how much more money they're making now, and his agent has every right to ask a little bit more than it would have cost if they'd have done it last winter when Freddie was coming off, MVP already. But now he's a World Series champion.
Where you at on that, Kelly?
On what they're going to do with him as a free agent, that kind of stuff. I can't even imagine. And I guess listening to that, I'm thinking, yeah, that makes sense. But I'm also thinking like Freddie, he's pretty rich already, and he knows he's going to get some cash. So does he take less? I mean,
I think so, but how much less?
Yeah, he's going to have to take less. That's almost assured.
Yeah.
but it's a matter of how much less. 10 million,
Well,
okay, but 30 million.
Well, he's already taken a discount too.
Well, that contract they gave him last time was fair at the time.
It was fair, but I guess he outplayed it.
He outplayed it badly. Yes, he outplayed it badly, but it was fair for where he was at that point of his career.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So what's he at? Like,
his agent,
like
his agent,
a year. Is that like this?
Nah, more than that. Now it's more than that. But his agent could be like what you just said, Eric. Is he outplayed his contract the last 4 or 5 years badly? So we ain't taking a discount now, and he shouldn't. He should not take a hometown discount. It should be fair for both sides. But somebody's going to come in with an offer
big
that's above what is fair for both sides. You know, because that's what it's going to take to get him somewhere else. And
who else is gonna pay him? No.
Dude, I could see the Dodgers. Can you imagine Freddie playing first base for the Dodgers?
They got Muncy.
You could move Muncy. They moved him this year.
Here's the wild card, and I know that.
How about the Angels?
The Angels are his hometown team, and
he could drive to the ballpark.
He is a California guy.
He could drive to the ballpark from his house in LA.
That would be the one that would scare me, but they have that Walsh kid who can play.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but he might be able to play a different position. I don't know.
And they got Trout, and they've got.
That's the only one. That's the only one that
Shohei.
Me.
They're gonna have to pay Shohei.
You got to buy pitching though, so they got
to buy pitching. Yep. So how about the Yankees? If they wanted to, I can't see Freddie going to New York, but they could make him an offer.
Rizzo's not a free agent, right?
No.
So he's I mean, I just don't know where else Freddie goes outside of like an Angels or. That's going to spend. Cubs aren't going to spend right now.
Maybe that's their logic too. Is we'll let you shop because we don't think
right.
But for
if
me,
I'm his agent,
just do it. I'm just throwing it out there. I just don't.
I've never wavered on this. I am 100% certain he's staying, or very close to 100%. Eric feels a little differently. He thinks there's a chance he can go, but I can't see it. And now that they've won the World Series, it would be the biggest PR mistake they've made in so long if they let him go, because all the goodwill that you built up, and the season tickets are going to spike again. They were second in the majors in attendance this year behind the Dodgers. And every team gets a spike in attendance after winning the World Series. The only exception was the Marlins when they blew up the team before they could even get the spike. But they made it known in 97 as they're winning the World Series that they're going to blow up the team.
The Braves don't have anybody coming up or any natural.
No, they don't have anybody ready. They'd have to get somebody. They're not moving Riley. Riley's becoming almost a gold glove guy.
I'm just talking. Yeah, for sure.
They traded Bryce Ball, who might have been that guy in a couple more years, but even he was a long ways away. But they don't have a guy. They'd have to go get a guy. It can't happen. He's too important to this team and his fan base.
I wonder how he feels. I know he's saying the right things, but I wonder how he feels about it getting to this point. I wonder how he felt when he was hitting 196 in May.
Right.
And looking at, if I don't turn this around, I got to hit the free agent market at hitting 220 and everybody thinks I get old. I wonder how he feels about the position he got put in, regardless of what he's saying.
How about if he would have got hit by a fastball again? We've seen it twice where he played less than 120 games. What if he'd have had one of those injuries again? He took all the risk. The team took none of the risk. None of the risk.
So
yeah. So I think his price tag's closer to 30 million now than 25, which it would have been if they'd have given him, I think a year ago, I think he would have taken 5 years and about 140.
I bet he'd still take 5-6 million less a year, if the years were the same and everything was equal to stay in Atlanta.
My understanding is he's asking for 6 and the Braves have been offering 5. That's just my understanding. I don't know if that's certain, but that's that he wants that 6th year. And if you're talking, probably closer to 30 million a year than 25. I don't know though, that for sure. But
what? Who are the other free agents again? We still got Rosario, Jock, Soler, and Duvall.
Duvall is a really weird case. I've never heard of a case like Duvall. He had a contract he signed with the Marlins that had a low salary this year with an option for 2022 with was a $7 million or $9 million option, or $7 million. I'm sorry, mutual option that he declined because he could make more than $7 million, but it had a $3 million buyout. Okay, so the Braves pay the $3 million buyout, but he's still not a free agent. So he's still arbitration. I've never heard of a case of that. So he's arbitration eligible. If the Braves want to pay him arbitration, they can just offer him arbitration and pay him about $9 million, but they already paid him the $3 million buyout.
I never heard of that either.
Never heard of that. So
how is the arbitration? How is the arbitration?
Because he doesn't have 6 years.
Duvall doesn't have 6 years?
Nope.
Oh, so he signed his free agent deal after getting waived or non-tendered?
He was non-tendered. He signed with the Marlins a 1-year deal plus an option, but he still doesn't have 6 years. So he's still under contractual control. If they give him arbitration, he'd make like $9 million plus the $3 million they paid him for the buyout. So they either got to non-tender him or sign him to like a 2-year deal to bring that average AAV down, I would think. It doesn't make much sense to give him $9 million plus $3 million, that, $12 million. I think you would give him like 2 years, $20 million, right? That makes more sense.
What do you make?
I'm trying to look him up because I'm thinking about.
He's going to get a raise,
He'd make about $9 million in arbitration. He would have made $7 million last year if they would have tendered him, but instead he went to the Marlins on that deal with like a $5 million salary this year and a $7 million option.
Oh, that's weird.
150 homers in less than 6 years.
Oh, he led the league. He led the league in RBIs and hit like 38 bombs, man, and won a Gold Glove. Yeah. He won a Gold Glove.
But he's done all this in the past, that people just forget how good he was in Cincinnati. I mean,
because the low OBP, he's got like the lowest OBP ever for a guy that led a league in RBIs, I think.
And one down year, man, it's crazy how much one down year scares teams,
Yep. When he came over and had that year.
Like even if Freddie had hit 230 last year for 1 year and then done this again this year, like it puts so much more doubt in teams' minds. But the fact that he's really never had that shitty year, it makes his free agency so much stronger.
But that's what Duvall is. It's like a 230, 225, 230 hitter is going to hit you 30 to 40 30 to 35 home runs and drive in a ton of runs. That's what he is. And play great, really solid defense.
It'll be interesting to see what they do then, because you got to fill the outfield. Acuna's going to come back, and you got Pache, and but you need 2 guys, and then Freddie, and then you already got Charlie coming back. The bullpen's staying intact, right? Pretty much the pitching staying intact. We should be getting Soroka back.
By the way,
pretty good team. They just got to spend some money to keep
most
these
of them
guys.
are coming back.
Yeah, you don't have the holes that this year time you had last year where you went out and got Smiley and Charlie Morton. Yeah. You don't have to do that now. You've got Ian Anderson, you got Fried, you got Charlie re-signed to a 2-year deal.
I'm telling you, man, Anthopoulos, these guys are smart, man. They're kind of like Belichick. Belichick gets so much credit for seeing kind of the end before it gets there. You're kind of like, man, he was all pro last year, and he releases them, and next thing you know, they're just he's like, oh, he saw it coming. That's how these guys are getting smart, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit if we don't see some turnover that might shock you.
Yeah,
and then you got a couple of guys that showed plenty in limited opportunities this year. I thought Kyle Wright really. We said the same thing last year, but even last year he had one great start in postseason and one where he got shelled. But he really looked good in those innings he pitched in the postseason. He looked like a different guy.
Postseason success, the confidence that you get off of that, man.
He looked like a different guy to me. Tucker Davidson's a guy. Muller, we saw Muller this year have a nice little run when he came up for a while.
Yeah,
it looked like he just got tired and teams got a scouting report on him. But that stuff is outstanding. So you only need 2 spots after those top 3 in the rotation.
And
I'll let them all fight it out too.
Yeah.
These guys are going to have a good offseason. It's going to be a different season now. It's going to be, things change and guys
the outfield's really the only spot. You got your infield's intact if you get Freddie back because Darno signed him to an extension. Catching position is loaded because you got Shea coming up and they got to decide on him and Contreras next year. Are you ready to have Shea be the backup, play a couple times a week? Or do you still want him spending another year at AAA and have Contreras be your backup? If not, you could trade Contreras this offseason. You got Pache and Drew Waters. I don't know that there's room for one of those guys, much less 2 of them. Yeah. I could see at least one of those guys getting traded this offseason.
I think it's hard to call Acuna a wild card, but like to have the best player in the game coming off an injury that he's going to be so hungry to get going again.
After watching these guys win the World Series.
You cannot ask for a more like uplifting psychological thing for a team that's going to come after. Because, dude, let's be honest. Like you go to the World Series and you win it, there's a hangover. It's a short off season.
Yeah.
Pitchers have been, how many extra pitches and innings did these guys throw? So, you got to be careful. There's a reason why teams don't go back to back.
Right.
Ever. For sure.
And so, but to have your best player and then Soroka, hopefully, guys coming back with a chip on their shoulder with energy and excitement of like getting back out on the field.
Yeah, I
On
didn't even
top
mention
of winning a
Soroka.
World Series, I mean,
Yeah, I didn't
you
even
probably
mention
can't draw it
Soroka
up any better. Yeah,
because I don't think you can count on Soroka. I mean, they want him to be back by sometime in the summer, but they learned this year they're not going to put a timetable on it. I mean, just coming. There's no precedent for a guy with two tears of the Achilles to come back. So you really don't know. I mean, until it happens. They certainly hope he does it, but you can't count on it.
Should be fun.
Ozuna, don't know what's going to happen with him. I can't see him playing again for the Braves, but I think he's going to get suspended for at least half a season.
I mean,
regardless.
I guess haven't we? Isn't the precedent for him kind of Jose Reyes a little bit, kind of coming back? I think he suited up for the Rockies a little bit before they got rid of him to send him to the Mets, the Blue Jays. Where did he go?
I just think that I think the Braves, I think that's a team by team thing. I could see him playing for a team like the Yankees, where they're just so big and it's a market that they're going to be like, I mean, look at their closer,
or West Coast somewhere like West where nobody's paying attention,
know, but I just can't
I don't see Ozuna coming back with the Braves.
This particular team is one of those. It's so geared towards family. I don't want to say traditional value, but family. I mean, they moved to the burbs. That's their audience, families with little kids and all that. And it's still the South. And there are still, I mean, the whole world's changing, but that's still really frowned upon what he did.
Yes, it should be.
Yes. Even though the charges were going to be dismissed probably when he finishes his pretrial thing that he entered the program.
And you got a whole team full of guys with wives and kids. It's not like a single bachelor team. I can't imagine guys wanting to play with him.
He didn't go to trial and beat this thing. He didn't say I'm innocent. I'm going to trial and I'm going to beat this thing. He entered that program, the diversion thing. So anyway, I don't know what they're going to do with him, but the good thing is that they've got so much. They've got so much more revenues now. They could eat a big chunk of that thing to make him go away. And I think that ultimately they'll have to. I don't think they'll have to package him like they did when they got rid of that terrible Upton contract, when they had to get rid of Kimbrel to unload it. Braves aren't going to do that with a top young player right now. They're not going to unload a guy to get rid of Ozuna. Right. They don't have to do that.
Nope.
So it's going to be interesting. Alex is really creative about that kind of shit. So, he got rid of Kemp when Alex came aboard. First trade he made was within like a month of taking that job when he replaced Copy, was to get rid of Kemp because he didn't want him in the clubhouse.
Yep.
He had him in LA, or nothing against Kemp, but he didn't want him to be an influence on these young guys. That was the whole thing. Alex wanted a clubhouse with a good clubhouse, and he didn't want that. He didn't want a guy at the end of his career.
Well, he'll talk about it openly. I mean, I had him I was in Toronto with Alex, and our teams were talented with no great culture, like at all. Like, it was very selfish. And I know DeRosa, played there and was supposed to be kind of the Brett Laurie, kind of whisperer, and they had lots of conversations about culture versus just talent. And then he went to LA and got firsthand look at how they do it.
And Alex made that decision. He said it was like the year they won the division was the year he decided that offseason before that, I'm going to go with character and see what happens. And he said he's never looked back. They've won 7. His teams that he's been on, Toronto, LA, and here, have won 7 division titles in a row. Yep. And he said he is totally convinced that how much character plays into it now.
Let's stick with the analytics and just not even take into account. Let's just
right. So they got a great mix in that he knows the importance of analytics, but he also knows ultimately that you got to have the right guys in it, or it just doesn't work.
Depth, man.
Every player says it. It's like there's stuff every player's saying. It matters. And I don't know how anybody can listen to everybody that's flown the plane say this is how you fly a plane. And just say, well, my program says something different, and not buy into what everybody's saying is one of the most important factors in winning, but it keeps happening.
The culture, and you got to have players that and there's nothing worse too when you're on a team and you just know, man, we got anybody that we need to rely on to come up and fill a spot.
Right.
Isn't good.
Depth,
so if you can,
and character, man.
The depth is everything, or at least that's why trade deadline stuff happens, and all of a sudden depth gets created. I mean, that was our thing with the Mets, and this year with the Braves. I mean, and numerous other teams. The Dodgers, that's their whole model.
Right. And that's where he learned it. Yeah. That's where Alex learned it.
Our team war is going to beat your team war. And that's it.
And that's why Alex said that he didn't do a good job last offseason he said, I built the team to win in October, but I didn't build it with enough depth to win during the season. Fortunately, he was able to fix that at the trade deadline. But he's not going to do that going forward. He's going to have that depth next year. Yeah. That's why I wouldn't be surprised to see him sign 2 of those outfielders. The 4, Duvall, I think, will be back because he's a great chemistry guy and he does what he does. He's going to give you good defense, can play center field because otherwise, I mean, they got to either rely on one of these young guys, Pache, Waters, or move Acuna back, and they don't want to move Acuna to center. They want him to play right field. And I think you got to get either Rosario might have earned himself a 3-year deal somewhere with good money.
I think you want Soler is the one I would pick.
Yeah, and if you have the DH, Soler's perfect for this team. Perfect. I think Soler and Duvall would be if you could get those 2 guys back. I think Jock gives you a whole lot, but I don't know that Jock he turned down a $10 million option. So
he wants to go get some
and play every day.
Life. Yeah.
He wants to go play every day. That's why he went to the Cubs to play every day. So, yeah, I'm sure he wants to get a multi-year deal, but he certainly earned his keep here and helped them win a World Series. So it's going to be interesting. Hey, how do you guys feel about the 3 finalists from each league for MVP? None of them made the postseason.
I didn't even look, honestly. Like I was saying earlier, I don't even care.
Tell me who they are real quick.
The 3 finalists for AL MVP, Vlad Guerrero, won the Triple Crown, obviously is Shohei Ohtani, Babe Ruth level.
Well, he should have it hands down.
It's one of I think he probably wins close to unanimous, if not. But Guerrero wins a Triple Crown, and he's not going to even come close to winning the MVP probably. But the third is Marcus.
Did he win the Triple Crown? He won the Triple Crown?
Didn't Guerrero end up winning Triple Crown? Led the league in
I'd have to look because
I'd have to look.
Oh, but he led the league in OBP, slugging, runs scored, total bases. No, he did not lead an average, but home runs 48.
He had a great year.
Yeah. Yeah. What did he end up not winning an average? That's right. Yeah. I don't know.
Gurriel won it. And then he tied with Salvador Perez, and Perez
169 OPS plus, 401 OBP, 601 slugging, led the league in both of those, led the league in runs, 123, total bases, 363, 48 homers. I mean, tied Salvador Perez for the home run. Yeah, for the home run league.
No, Ohtani wins that.
Yeah, and then third is Marcus Simeon, also from the Jays.
Great season, Marcus. But
I
mean, Ohtani gives you an extra roster spot when you're talking about depth.
Right. And this might be the only year we ever see Ohtani do what he did.
Yeah.
I don't think he can stay healthy.
Harper,
NL finalists.
Soto.
Again, it's hard to argue with any of the 3 when you look at OPS plus and all the analytics and all that. And if you look at those, they're off the charts. Bryce Harper, Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis Jr. I would only argue that even though Riley doesn't come close as far as like OPS plus and shit, Riley played 160 games to Tatis's 130 games.
Yeah.
130 games for a team that didn't win the division title. I know it's phenomenal. His numbers are phenomenal, but isn't there any value in playing Gold Glove caliber defense at third base and playing 160 games, doing what Riley did? I just think, man, but it's hard to argue if you're going on analytics and you're putting OPS plus and all that.
Yeah.
But Tatis played half the season in the outfield, though. They moved him to keep him healthy.
That's true.
And he wasn't a very good outfielder.
So you're telling me, Riley wasn't in the top 3?
Not top 3.
No chance. He can't get it. Yeah.
I think he'll probably end up finishing about 6 from judging from guys but like I was listening to Harold Reynolds said what I said this morning. Harold Reynolds thought a guy like Riley or Ozzie Albies should be in the top 3 because of what they did for a team that Riley picked up so much of the slack with Acuna getting hurt. I mean, it was huge. If you look at Riley's second half numbers, off the charts. It came through in all those pressure games where Tatis down the stretch, he was hurt for about a month, missed like 3 DL stints when his shoulder went out. Team down the stretch, they were eliminated at the very end. And Soto had a phenomenal second half, but for a team that was completely out of it. The Nationals were out of it when he was putting up these huge numbers. Put up huge numbers when the Nationals were completely out of it. And his OBP was off the charts because a lot of teams didn't pitch to him.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's just, how do you weigh all this stuff? I don't know. And Bryce Harper, great season.
I got to be honest. I feel like Harper's going to end up winning that.
I think
he probably is.
But
I think he's more
Riley
deserving. I think he's Harper more deserving than the other two because Phillies were in it till the end when the Braves finally eliminated them. But Harper put up great numbers for the Phillies during the stretch drive when they really were threatening the Braves. They got even with them for a game or two. I think Harper's more deserving than those other two. Because they played it. But Riley, I think Riley belongs in top 5, and I would argue more deserving than Tatis just because of how he did it, how important the games were.
I agree.
But yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not just sitting here as this former Brave talking on a Braves podcast. Like, that's a sham that Riley's not a finalist, and he should win it. And so the fact that he's not even a finalist is just a joke. Like, I don't know.
It's an over reliance on analytics when it comes to OPS plus, because it's off the charts when you look at those guys OPS plus. But I mean, 10 years ago, nobody even knew what that was. Everybody was looking at, if you look at the traditional numbers and even OPS, Riley had great numbers.
I'll just go on the eyeball test. How about that?
Yeah.
I mean, you kidding me? Like,
huge.
Nobody out of the 6 guys you named just played in the postseason is a joke. That's a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes me mad.
I think a lot of times too, like, you got to watch the games to value the guy because Austin had so many big hits. And when you just do the analytics side of it, you can go 2 for 3 with 2 homers, 2 solo shots, and bump your WAR up or whatever stat it is. But a single that keeps the game going in the 9th inning, those big, huge at-bats that change the trajectory of your team's season, like that walk-off or that big knock he got against St. Louis. Yeah. If Riley doesn't get that big hit there, they're not rolling like they started to roll. Those big comeback wins, there's just moments that don't get the weight they deserve because the formulas don't calculate it right.
Because you can't quantify it with analytics.
Can't quantify it, but what it does for your team's season and when you do the shit you do matters so much. And it doesn't get measured the right way. But if you watch the Braves, you saw his value all year.
And how many of those hits did Riley have in late innings with 2 outs and often with 2 strikes that totally deflated the opponent?
Yeah.
Those are huge, man. He had tons of 2-strike and 2-out hits.
Yeah. And I think that, I think you could probably strike out with the bases loaded, but go 3 for 4.
Yeah.
The biggest at bat of the game, you clam up and let your team down. But because you went 3 for 4, you're scoring big points, with the formula. Yeah. But for me, that's the at bat your team needed you. And when you watch Riley this year, he was probably 1 for 4. But that one hit he got that day, even if it was an RBI single or just moved a dude first to third, but kept the inning going, those things are just as important when you look at the big picture of winning.
And you got 30 people vote for MVP, right? 2 from each city. A lot of the writers, especially a lot of the younger ones, but also a lot of the older ones too, when they stack up the stats, they do a great job of putting in time to analyze it. But if you didn't see a player play every day, you saw this, you're going to end up you're going to look at their WAR, right? Yep. Well, Freddie gets screwed on WAR because he plays first base. Because defensive analytics, I'm sorry, but they haven't come nearly as far as offensive analytics. Defensive analytics are screwed up in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because they still can't quantify things like range and positioning and shifts, and first base doesn't get nearly the value that it should in WAR. And Riley's defensive WAR isn't nearly what it should be. And Ozzie Albies, I looked at his today and I think it was 0.9 defensive WAR. Ozzie Albies played a really strong defense this year. I don't care what. If Colton Wong had like 6 defensive runs saved and Ozzie had 1. But I saw Ozzie play great defense all year. He might have had a couple of errors, but he played great defense for the most part.
Yeah, you can't measure the confidence, that Freddie gives to his infielders to hop a ball across the whole infield knowing he's going to pick it. Those changes. But when you watch him all year, Freddie picks freaking everything, man.
Yeah. And like a guy like some of these other guys do too, but when you're talking about like the WAR stuff, like I can't imagine the stuff that goes into that does not take into account that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like why does Paul Goldschmidt have such a good WAR at first base, but Freddie wouldn't? Like I played with both of them.
Right.
Yeah.
You could throw a curveball over there and they'll both pick it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like how does one not grade equal
Yeah.
to the other?
Like, I just don't, like, some of the war, I look at defensive war sometimes and I go, yeah, that guy is the guy that's first. Yeah, he is the best. But then other ones I look at and go, huh? Like, and not to, because Duvall played a really solid defense this year, but I didn't think his defensive run saves should be nearly as high as they were. If you look at them, it's like Kiermaier was that year. That's what Duvall's were this year. And I'm going, I didn't see him play every day with the Marlins, but there's no way. Adams just not that great defense. He's really good.
Yeah.
But then I look at Ozzy's, and Ozzy's had one defensive run saved. I'm going, Duvall's up here and Ozzy's down here? No, come on. That doesn't make any sense,
something's
man.
Jacked up. Yeah, something's not right.
So they got a long way to go to get the defensive runs, the defensive analytics on a par with the offensive ones. I just don't trust defensive analytics a lot of times. So to judging
an MVP off it's
right,
tough. Yeah.
Right. Because some guys are going to get screwed if you do that in war. So
agreed.
Anyway, it's good that it doesn't matter, because when your team wins the World Series, you don't care. Freddie doesn't care. Freddie said last year, I'll trade MVP and a Hank Aaron Award and everything to win a World Series, and he won it. So.
Good for them. It's awesome. So happy for Snit.
Yeah, ecstatic for Snit.
Of course, I'm happy for everybody, but if you know Snit and you know, like, he was known him since I was 18, man. I mean, played for him in the minor leagues. Like, if you know him like that, like, it's nothing. It's just incredible. Why
do the guys that played for him in the minors all have revered him, have so much respect for him? What was he like when you were? And
you know what's hilarious is that the Smoltz comment has gone around about how he's like, man, I was scared of him.
Yeah.
Dude, I played for Snit in 2003. I was 21, and I played for him again the very next year, 2 years in a row. The first year, I don't know that I willingly walked up to him to have a conversation the whole season, because I was scared out of my mind. Because he just had this, like, his hat, dude. He wears his hat like a drill sergeant.
Yep.
He had these big sunglasses, and he had a mustache, and he just.
He looked tough with that mustache
the whole time. Never like, not the Snit today, like smiling half and half, just straight mean mug. And I was scared out of my mind. I mean,
by the time I met him, he was the nicest coach in the game.
Yeah. Different role though. He had a different role, and I think that was the perfect persona for that role that he had in the minor league with those young kids.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, I had him in my second go around there in AA, and my attitude changed because I was repeating a level, and I kind of was like, I had my own attitude change, and I just got a little more loose, and I would like go up and just mess around and talk to him. And after I did that, like, our relationship just changed. And from then on, a dude he's like your uncle. I mean, awesome.
Yeah.
But he's just steady, awesome, loves, cares, like, same dude.
Knows how hard the game is.
More than anybody.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to just say, like, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You're he would tell you. I mean, you got more talent than I got in your pinky than I got in my whole body, and I could never do what you did. And he'll tell you that, and take care of catchers, take care of bullpen guys, take care of bench guys, looking out for the last guy in the bullpen. Like, he looked out for everybody.
He got me 10 years.
No ego.
Let me hang around and get 10 years.
He calls his coaches rock stars because he knows they all played the game, and they all played better than he did. And he calls them rock stars, and he has no ego, no fear of one of them taking his job. And none of them would try to take his job because they all love and respect the guy. So it's like that, man, if you put together a front office that translated that to any business, they would be so successful. If you had those guys leading up as a top level management in your business, if you had that kind of relationships, that's what every business is looking for. The guy that runs the whole ship, but delegates authority and doesn't worry about any of the guys under him trying to take his job, because they all respect him and they all just want to do their job great. It's perfect.
He said something so funny when I was watching his World Series, on the field stuff. He said, I've been recycled so many times.
Yeah.
I thought that was the best way to put it, is getting recycled. Like, they kept him around, but they threw him around and made him into something else.
When he got scapegoated, man, he got scapegoated that year.
Recycled.
I was asked, I did the lead podcast at our place, and they asked me about Snit. Why didn't he pursue another job when he got scapegoated, when he got jumped off from third base coach that year? That Frank Wren, they needed to make a change because they disappointed that year.
We were all shocked.
He was the easy guy to do it. Been in the organization for almost 40 years at the time. throw Snit back down to AAA, you know, that's what we'll do. And we made a move. We didn't just stand pat. And they said, why didn't you look for another job? And I go, well, Snit is nothing more than loyal. And this is all he's ever known. So even though he knew he got screwed, he wasn't the squeaky wheel. He didn't tell people I got screwed. You know, I didn't deserve to lose my job. Instead, he went down to AAA. He was pissed off. Yeah. But he didn't let it affect him one day doing that job when he went back down to AAA. And he never thought he was going to get a chance to manage this team.
No. So great about it.
Yeah. The guy that replaced him at third base coach, Freddie, is the guy, the guy he replaced as third base coach, he ends up replacing him when Freddie got fired. You know?
Freddie got that email.
When Freddie got the email from Delta saying your flight leaves in 24 hours. What? We still got 3 games left in the series.
Unbelievable.
When Freddie told me that, because Freddie called me and told me, he said, I told you I'd let you know if I got the call. They fired me. He called me and he said, and Obi, I got to tell you how it happened. One other thing, how I found out. He said, I got an alert from Delta that my flight was leaving in 24 hours. I'm going, Freddie, you got to be kidding. You got to be kidding me. He goes, no, somebody screwed up because they booked it that went to his account or whatever. And they didn't say, don't alert him or whatever. And he got the thing saying my flight's leaving in 24 hours. And it was the first game of a 4-game series in Pittsburgh.
We were there. I was on the team.
We were there.
Okay, well, what
kind of hilarious. Not really.
What was that like, man, that next day? Because I remember the atmosphere, because you guys got off the shitty start that year. Yeah. And I remember that next day, Snit is there. And you guys are in the dugout around Snit. It was like this gloom had been lifted off the team. You guys were sitting around shooting the shit with Freddie, with Snit, you and Frenchie, and everybody was like, all of a sudden it was upbeat. They're like, oh man, they couldn't have given it to a better guy. But all of a sudden the doom and gloom was gone, man.
Yeah.
Well, he gave one of the best speeches when you remember that, Kelly, when he addressed the team for the first time.
Yeah.
The stuff he was saying, I'll never forget how hard this game is. I got your guys back. I don't care if I get fired. You know, like the stuff he was saying, he'd been in enough clubhouses. He knew exactly what he wanted to say to us. And I mean, it went over pretty well with the squad, and we all knew him.
Yeah. And then they had his back when he would have got let go. And, and they went and said, this is a guy, take the interim label off of him. They brought in all the other guys, and guys like Freddie fought for him, kept the job. Yeah. Overwash and Bud Black.
Yep. Funny how that works.
Yeah. And then he was going to get fired in 17 when Copy got suspended, but they said, we need the stability. You know, Freddie, let's not have total upheaval here. Let's have some stability. Let Snit keep the job. That saved his job. And then boom, took off.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
4 straight division titles. See those 2 guys hugging and celebrating the World Series. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Anyway. Well, it's been cool. It's I don't know that we'll ever see everything come together as perfectly as it did with this team. You know, this manager, these coaches, these players, this general manager who's the perfect guy for this team. I mean, it's all just you just try to win. Nobody's repeated. I think in like 9 years, 10 years. It's been a long time.
Well, way longer than that.
It takes so much.
Yankees. Who was
I think the Yankees.
Yeah, Yankees in 90.
Well, shit, they haven't even played one since 99.
99, 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
No one's repeated.
God damn, that's amazing.
The Giants won 3 every other year.
Every other year, yeah. 3 and 5 years.
Red Sox have won 4, but they didn't repeat.
Nope. So it's hard, man. It's going to be hard, but God, I think this team will have as good a chance as any of those, just based on who's coming back. You know,
and their division, league, the National League. I mean, honestly, like. The NL West, you know, beats everyone up, and those 2 teams, and then the division's easy, and then the Central's kind of a mess.
Right.
So,
but you got to have you got to have things go your way and be playing. We've talked about this 100 times. How the team going into the postseason that's hot, that's playing its best ball, whether that's by winning a wild card or just being pushed to the end, like the Braves were. They were pushed to the final week.
Yeah,
and are in such better shape than the team that can coast those last 2 weeks. Walt Weiss said the same thing to me. He said that he's been on so many teams that he's seen them, where they took that. He said anything more than like 3 or 4 days of rest is too much. It's too much. Yeah. Then you can't just restart. You lose your edge. They didn't lose their edge. Yeah. And they were all careful not to lose their edge. After they clinched, took one day off, gave like 4 guys a day off, and then boom, right back to it. Finish that series against the Mets and win those rest of those games.
Yep.
Yeah.
No doubt, man. I enjoyed it.
Fun. Is it great for guys? Is it great for you guys? So, like alumni of a team, do you still take pride in if you played with a team for a while when they win it?
That's funny you said that, man. I can't even tell you how many people, A, did I go to any World Series games? B, did I go to the parade?
Right.
And it's hard not to like snap a little on people that don't know. But it's like, come on. Like, I can talk to you guys and be like,
right.
I wasn't on this team.
Right.
No affiliation.
It's not my alma mater.
Yeah. Like they would look at me and be like, hey, good to see you again. Get out of here.
People were telling me congratulations for like a week, and I'm like, on what? I didn't do shit.
Right. People telling me that. People telling me that, dude. I'm like, hey, I cover the team, man. I didn't do anything to help them win.
Yeah, you're not getting a share.
Exactly.
Like World Series, like playoff tickets. Like I had to explain to everyone, like,
right,
players have to pay for their tickets.
Right.
The World Series tickets you have to pay for as a player. So the last thing you're going to get is somebody that you don't really, let's be honest, we don't talk to each other enough. Like if I was hanging out with Freddie, like, every day or something, and we were tight, like that's one thing.
Yeah.
But when you're kind of checking in like once a month or every 2 months, you're not going to go, hey man, get some tickets.
Right.
I'll pay you for them. Like, leave the mess alone.
After dealing with that too, you're not.
Yeah, you don't. And we've been there. Like it's just the extra stress and
you don't want to put that stress on them.
How about Mentor, man? Mentor went home. They started the World Series in Houston. He's from right down the road in Tyler, Texas. He said, I had to limit it to 10, man, because I never knew how much stress it was. All the people calling him, trying to get tickets.
Playing at home's hard.
He had to cut it off at 10. You got family and friends, close friends. But like, I'm thinking 10 probably cost him a lot of money too.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, and just in terms of going, like, I mean, we played a long time, went to a lot of baseball games.
I don't want to deal with the traffic, the parking.
The traffic. I mean, and the tickets that I could have got was like the friends and family. It's not like they were cheap and not good enough for like, I don't want to go sit way down the line.
Well,
I watched how many years of games from the dugout.
Yeah.
Like that view down there, it's just doesn't.
Yeah,
it's not cool.
And it was cold and drizzly for the first 2 games in Atlanta too.
For real. But no, I mean it was awesome. I had so many friends that didn't play. They were just they have season tickets, and it like made their year.
Oh yeah, so, I tell you what, the Braves fans, Atlanta fans, they forever changed. I think the impression of Braves fans and Atlanta fans because they were terrific. Yeah. They filled every seat and they were loud as hell, man. They were great. They were great fans. They were as loud as anywhere we went. Dodger Stadium might have been louder because they turned the damn music up so loud that people have to yell to be heard over it. But the Braves fans were every bit as enthusiastic and loud as there. And Milwaukee and Houston. They were all great fans everywhere. But the Braves fans, nobody can say that bullshit about they don't turn out to see the Braves until they get to the the LCS. They were terrific that whole postseason.
You could tell on TV.
Yep, great fans.
Yep.
So I hated when they moved to the suburbs, but it's working out for them because they are raking in the dough in the Battery.
Yep.
Those places were hopping. They were hopping. Do you see how many people they had in the Battery? Good Lord.
Hey, Dave, my whole world now is youth baseball in Atlanta.
Yeah.
They did the best thing they could have possibly done is move up into that area.
Yeah. Yeah.
The amount of kids that play travel baseball that think at 10 that they're the next Freddie Freeman.
Oh.
And so therefore, like, I'm not joking. Like these kids really think they're awesome.
And now, can you imagine now they're World Series champions?
Yeah. So they got the right fan base to move where they moved. They did it perfect.
Yeah.
They couldn't have done that any better. Yeah. They're in the perfect spot. Anyway,
all right. Well, Kelly, we've kept you long enough, man. I appreciate your time. It was a long one. It was great. We'll have you on again if you don't mind the off season at some point.
Absolutely, dude.
We'll talk about the Freddie decision when it's made.
Yes. Let's do it.
I'll be shocked if it's not a good one. All right.
Thanks for coming on, Kelly.
See you, boys.
See you.
All right. 755 is real, everybody. Thanks for watching us and listening to us. We really appreciate the ride. It was great in the postseason. When you guys gave us great numbers throughout the postseason, we appreciate it. We are out.